From the studios of Staten Island Community Television, you're watching In the Bleachers, the TV show for the world's most passionate sports fans. Hello, everyone. I'm Jaime Hixson. Usually you see me here with my friend Hector Boza. Hector is basically in parts unknown right now. We're not really sure where he is, although he'll probably tell you that he's frolicking around with a bunch of women when he's really not. So as of right now, I'm kind of sort of still waiting around for him, whether he makes it into the studio or whether he calls into the show from his iPhone. So in the meantime, I'm going to be taking you solo until he finally decides to pry his lips off the bottle that he's been drinking from and actually do something useful for a change. So I say to you, if you want to call us up, you can. It's 718-727-0143. And you can also see past shows of ours on our Facebook page and on YouTube as well, and on Twitter. Which reminds us, if there is a story out there, a sports story that you would like for us to know about, we would be happy to tell that story for you. So contact us through either one of those avenues, whether it's our Facebook page or on YouTube or on Twitter. And you can also contact us through Instagram and Snapchat as well. With all that's been happening in New York sports recently, I am, for some reason, by the way, before I start, I just wanted to say Eileen Hanlon, my longtime dear friend and coworker, Eileen Hanlon is on the other side of the glass right now. And she's actually going back and forth between being in the control room, checking out the show, and getting things ready for a big music show that's taking place in the big studio next door. So I want to give a big, quick shout out to Eileen Hanlon, who's another longtime employee here at CTV, and she has been so helpful and so kind and so generous in helping things out for everyone involved. Now, I was about to say that with everything that's been going on in New York sports, once again, baseball has taken the spotlight. And the reason why is because an old friend and a familiar face, Robinson Cano, is making his return to the Big Apple. Just this afternoon, the Mets formally completed the trade with the Mariners for Robinson Cano. The Mets wound up acquiring Cano and a really hot reliever, Edwin Diaz, from the Mariners for Jay Bruce, Anthony Swarzak, Gerson Bautista, and two major prospects. This is the first time in a long, long time that the Mets became the first team to make a really, really big splash and not the Yankees. And when you think about it, I think Robinson Cano was destined to make his return here to New York some way, somehow, whether it was as a Yankee or as a Met, either as an active player or whether he signed here so he can formally announce his retirement here. This was such a critical and monumental move that the Mets' new general manager, Brodie Van Wagenen, just made to get Cano. The wild card in this is the reliever Edwin Diaz. This is a young 20-something kid who throws 100 miles an hour and got 51 saves this past season. The upside that this kid has is just astronomical. Not only did the Mets make a trade for a big bopper that they can plug into the infield, they also solved their closer problem. And even though Robinson Cano played half of this season because he wound up serving a drug suspension. And yes, I am still angry about that drug suspension. He wound up getting banned 80 games for taking PEDs. Even though he wound up serving that drug suspension, he wound up completing the entirety of those 80 games, yet he still was able to manage to hit 300 for the half of the season that he was able to play. And you look at his numbers, he was still able to maintain a lot of consistency at the plate. He's a lifetime 300-plus hitter for his career. And when you think about it, except for the 2 or 3 years that he was under 300, Cano has always been a feared hitter. Now, the only difference is he spent all of his 14 years in the majors in the American League. He's going to be making his National League debut full-time next season. But still, this was a wonderful, brilliant trade that the Mets made. The only downside to this, though, is that they gave up the last 2 number 1 draft picks that they wound up having. So now the Mets are going to have to look elsewhere to try and replenish their farm system. At the same time, though, you can't fault the Mets for wanting to look at 2019 as the year that they're trying to win. Plain and simple, the Mets want to win immediately. Now, just because that they completed this deal doesn't mean that they're finished, because the Mets still have a need for first base, catcher, a 4th and 5th starter, and back end of the bullpen help. And there have been quite a few names that the Mets have been linked to recently as far as who they want to go for. The flip side of this whole thing is there has been a lot of Noah Syndergaard trade rumors. And let me tell you right now, trading Noah Syndergaard would be the single worst thing that the Mets could do right now. Why give up on a guy, another guy who's a 100-mile-an-hour flamethrower, a guy who has, even though he's been hurt on and off in his time with the Mets, has been nothing but a model of consistency for them. You put him in there with Jacob deGrom, batting orders are going to have major problems with those two going into next season. Now, as far as what the Mets can do, as far as first base is concerned, the Mets have Peter Alonso in their farm system. If they can't make a deal for an everyday first baseman right now, why not give Peter Alonso a shot? He's done nothing but mash hits and home runs in the minor leagues. The only downside is that he's a rather mediocre first baseman, but the Mets will take that any time. There have been a few comparisons to Lucas Duda, who was never the greatest defensive first baseman, but just was not able to realize his full potential when he could have. So what can they do for first base? Maybe Peter Alonso is the answer. As far as what to do with the rest of the infield, well, figure Cano is going to be the everyday second baseman. And even though he's 36 years of age right now, he still has a lot left in the tank because he's still been able to show some consistency at the plate. He turns a double play like nobody's business. So he's always been a really good defensive player. If he can just keep his head in the game and concentrate on the entire 9 innings, because that's been his problem with him. His problem has been that he's been on cruise control the majority of the time. But if he can concentrate the full 9 innings, then the Mets will really have gotten themselves situated at second. As far as third base, what's going to be with Todd Frazier? Todd Frazier was a complete bomb at third base for the Mets this past season. He didn't even raise his batting average past 210, if I'm not mistaken. And there's also the youngster, Jeff McNeil, who was a revelation in the time that he played at second base. Maybe he gets moved to third base, or maybe he's used as a bench player, or maybe he gets traded. Who knows? As far as what they're going to do in the outfield, now that Jay Bruce has been sent to the Mariners, there's the issue of who's going to be the right fielder. You figure it's going to be Michael Conforto in left and Brandon Nimmo, who's a joy to watch, both at the plate and on the field, taking center field. No one knows what's going to happen with Yoenis Cespedes. He's still recovering from a double heel surgery, so obviously he's not going to be ready for the start of the regular season. He's going to be lucky if he'll be able to play half the season next year. There's also Juan Legatus, another guy who has had major problems keeping himself healthy. So as of right now, maybe the Mets look for some kind of Band-Aid in right field right now, or maybe they use one of their other kids to try and plug that hole in right field. Who knows? As far as behind the plate is concerned, I know the Mets were interested in Yan Gomes from the Indians. Unfortunately, he wound up getting traded to the Mariners, and that's one team that's kept themselves extremely busy so far. The Mariners managed to make trades to send away Robinson Cano and Yan Gomes. As it turns out, Yan Gomes wound up being traded to the Mariners. It was either the Mariners or, it was to the Nationals. Excuse me. Yan Gomes wound up getting traded to the Washington Nationals. And now there are more trade rumors involving their two-time Cy Young winner, Corey Kluber. Can you imagine Corey Kluber in a Mets or a Yankees uniform right now? If the Yankees can cut a deal for Corey Kluber, I think they would be set in the starting rotation for next season. That would mean 5 proven caliber starters that the Yankees would have to plug into their rotation for next year. As far as what's going to happen with the Mets behind the plate, I've heard the names JT Realmuto. I've heard the name Yasmani Grandal and Wilson Ramos. Yasmani Grandal is a free agent right now, and he has been described as someone who can really help a team from both sides of the plate, offensively and defensively. His problem was he had major concentration issues behind the plate during the playoffs this past season. As far as JT Realmuto, he's going to cost somebody an arm and a leg, because this is a guy who could be one of the next five great catchers in the majors right now. There's also Wilson Ramos, another kid who's a veteran free agent. There's also an X factor in all of this, Martin Maldonado, who played for the Astros this past season. Now, he's a 32-year-old catcher who, let's face facts, the kid cannot hit the side of a barn. He's a .220 hitter for his entire career. Plus, he's only played 130 games at least each of the last 2 seasons, which means the previous 5 years, he was basically coming off the bench to try and fill in for whoever was the frontline catcher. But from what I understand, Martin Maldonado is a really solid defensive catcher. He can call a game. As far as him throwing out base runners, I'm going to check his stats to see how he did with throwing out base runners. I'm looking at MLB.com's app on my phone here. Let's see. For his career, he has committed. It says he's committed as a catcher. Let's see. He has 296 assists and has committed 35 errors. Turned in 28 double plays, which is not bad. And he's thrown out 113 base runners while allowing 187 stolen bases. And he has a .992 fielding percentage. Throwing out 113 base runners in 8 years, it's an okay percentage right there. So maybe the Mets can go on the cheap and get Martin Maldonado. If the Mets really wanted to get some power and run production behind the plate, I would go for Yasmani Grandal. Yasmani Grandal had 24 home runs this past season with the Dodgers, and he's got some really valuable playoff experience that the Mets could use. Now, the other issue with the Mets is getting frontline starting pitching. The Mets, as we know, already have Syndergaard, who may or may not be on somebody else's team next year, and the reigning Cy Young Award winner, Jacob deGrom. There's no guarantee Jacob deGrom is going to repeat his numbers from this year. There's no guarantee that Noah Syndergaard is going to remain 100% healthy all of next year. But right now, those are the two best guys that the Mets have right now. After them, there's Jason Vargas, who was a complete bust the first half of the year, but then was able to settle down the second half of the year. There's also Steven Matz, who was a colossal disappointment this past season. As far as what the Mets can do for third, fourth, and fifth starters, well, I'm seeing a look at some of the free agents that are out there right now. I'm seeing the names Patrick Corbin, who's a Syracuse native. There's Dallas Keuchel. There's Jay Happ, who really pitched great for the Yankees this past regular season. Charlie Morton, Nathan Eovaldi, even Lance Lynn, who also spent a little time with the Yankees. There's also the kid from Westchester County, Marcus Stroman. Or maybe they'll cut a deal for Madison Bumgarner. Although if you ask the Giants, they're going to say that they're not trading Madison Bumgarner. I also mentioned Corey Kluber as well. Why not take a shot at Dallas Keuchel? This is a guy who has been a model of consistency for the last, I would say, 5 years right now. You look at his numbers of the last 5 years, 12-9, 20-8. Then he had a hiccup, 9-12 record, then 14-5, then 12-11. Dallas Keuchel is definitely somebody that the Mets could offer a deal to because, for one, he's a proven playoff pitcher. And for another, he's got off-speed stuff that really gives other teams trouble. Yankee fans will tell you that he definitely gave them a lot of trouble in the last couple of playoffs. So that's number one. Number two, Jay Happ, a guy who's bounced around from one team to another, but has been solid at best. Maybe he could be somebody that the Mets can look to. Charlie Morton, another pitcher who lately was with the Astros. I'm surprised the Astros decided not to give this kid a contract. He was really terrific this past season. He won 15 games this past year. And it also helps that he's a local kid. He was born in New Jersey and attended a high school in Connecticut. And looking at his last couple of seasons, he's won 29 games in the last 2 seasons. So maybe you could consider either Charlie Morton or Dallas Keuchel if they have the money to spare, because apparently they did wind up sparing it for Robinson Cano. Maybe give Dallas Keuchel and Charlie Morton a couple of deals. So the Mets have so many options to look at. What can the Mets do for relief help? Now that they have Edwin Diaz as their closer, they also have Robert Gesellman and Seth Lugo. That's a really respectable trio that the Mets could use as their front end of the bullpen. Now, as far as what to do for the back end of the bullpen, let's see what they can do. I'm still looking at the MLB app on my phone, see what they can do as far as relief help is concerned. David Robertson of the Yankees is a free agent right now. One intriguing name is Andrew Miller, the ex-Yankee. Andrew can still bring the heat, even at his advanced age. He still throws 95 to 100 miles an hour. Maybe consider David Robertson or Andrew Miller coming in. And even Jody Familia, who was a closer for a long time, maybe he could be the one to use for the back end of the bullpen, although he's not exactly the same pitcher when it comes to being a closer and being a setup guy and being a back end of the bullpen kind of guy. There's also the names of Zach Britton, Joakim Soria, Justin Wilson, Joe Kelly, who's a veteran, Kelvin Herrera, another veteran. There's also Craig Kimbrell, who wants a 6-year contract, but I doubt that any team out there is going to be that desperate or that gullible to give him a 6-year deal just so they can make him the closer. And there's even an X factor in all of this. There's a veteran reliever named Adam Ottavino, a Brooklyn kid who pitched really well for the Rockies this past season. He had a 2.43 ERA, and he pitched in 75 games. In fact, he's pitched 138 games the last 2 seasons combined, and he's been pretty consistent overall. He has a 3.68 ERA for his career, and his best numbers have been 2.64, 2.67, and 2.43. 2.43 was a career high for him. And also, he's 33 years of age, so naturally, he's got a lot of experience. So maybe the Mets can consider any of those guys. They've got a lot of things to look at right now. And the winter meetings, if I'm not mistaken, are going to be starting this coming weekend. So maybe the Mets can do something for an encore and add pitching or a first baseman or an outfielder. Whichever one can give them the most punch, be it a first baseman or an outfielder. Whoever can give them the most punch on either position, I am all for it. Now, as far as the Yankees are concerned, the Yankees, except for making the James Paxton deal, they've been keeping themselves pretty quiet for now. I've also heard the name Patrick Corbin as far as what the Yankees should do for a starting pitcher. The issue with Patrick Corbin is, number one, he's been a little brittle for most of his career. He's not been able to keep himself off the disabled list. And number two, he hasn't really put up the eye-popping numbers that the Yankees have been hoping for. And I've been hearing that James Paxton, who the Yankees got from the Mariners, is drawing a lot of comparisons to Andy Pettitte. And let me tell you right now, Andy Pettitte was a special pitcher that the Yankees had for 16 years. So, if anything, I would really hold off on those comparisons right now. Of course, Paxton's had modest numbers the last 2 years. He's won a combined 23 games in the last 2 years. He has 41 wins and 26 losses for his career, which is now completed its 6th season. Plus, he pitched in a rather pitcher-friendly ballpark, which is Seattle. Now let's see what he can do in the pressure cooker that is New York City. I mean, overall, the numbers are okay. 41 and 26 record, 3.42 ERA, and 617 strikeouts in 582 and a third innings. And the league's hitting .237 against him. He's also given up 54 home runs. This past season was really bad for him. He gave up 23 home runs this past season. So he really needs to cut down on the home runs if he wants to lengthen that starting rotation. But the one thing that I have been hearing about the Yankees is their possible interest in Patrick Corbin. Patrick Corbin has had a rather so-so career pitching for the Diamondbacks. And looking at his numbers right now, his career high in victories is 14, which he set in 2013 and 2017. This past season, he took a little bit of a dip victories-wise, but his losses went down, and also his ERA went down. He went from an ERA over 4 last year to an ERA of 3.15 this year. And seeing what his strikeout numbers are, he's got 897 strikeouts and 945 and 2/3 innings. So you can tell that he's not much of a strikeout pitcher. So my guess is he's going to either rely on tossing stuff low in the zone so he can get ground balls, or maybe he'll be a fly ball pitcher. Who really knows? We'd have to see what kind of scouting report that we have on him to see exactly what kind of commodity they can get for him. Other than that, I would do something to try and make a deal for Corey Kluber. If the Yankees could give up Justice Sheffield for James Paxton, who says that they're not ripe in wanting to trade away another prospect to get Corey Kluber? And right now, the Yankees have more than enough in their farm system to try and make a deal for Corey Kluber. As far as what else is going on in baseball, we mentioned that the World Series, well, not the World Series, but the winter meetings are going to be coming up this coming weekend. So you're going to be seeing a lot of wheeling and dealing this coming weekend. So let's see what the Yankees and the Mets can do to try and improve themselves for next season. There have also been rumors about the Yankees possibly putting Gary Sanchez up for sale. Well, Brian Cashman already made it clear Gary Sanchez is not going anywhere, nor should he go anywhere. Granted, he was a major disappointment behind the plate last year and at the plate with his hitting. But still, this was his first full season in the majors. I mean, even though he only took in X amount of games last year, there was still that rookie wall, that sophomore slump that he wound up going through. He played just 89 games last year. And 2017, he wound up putting in 122 games, and that's when he really shined. This past season, not only did he play just 89 games, he was also coming off a major injury in which he necessitated to be out quite a while. So I think we should just calm down a little bit and let him gather himself the rest of the winter so he can get ready for February. Of course, the big story in baseball, what is going to happen with Bryce Harper and Manny Machado? Well, supposedly, Bryce Harper was spotted with his friend Chris Bryant of the Cubs the other day. So, dare I say, Bryce Harper to the Chicago Cubs? You never really know. The Cubs were a disappointment this season, and part of that is because they didn't really have that extra punch in their batting order like they did a couple of years ago when they won the World Series. So maybe Bryce Harper can be the answer for them next season. And what about Manny Machado? There's still Manny Machado to the Yankees rumors running rampant. Well, let me tell you right now, after what Manny Machado did in the World Series, where he basically admitted that he was not hustling around the bases, I'm not really sure that Manny Machado is the way to go for the Yankees right now. Besides, they basically have, excuse me, they basically have Gleyber Torres and Miguel Andujar, two rookies who had tremendous seasons at the plate, although Torres was a little bit of a disappointment playing shortstop and second base for a little bit. So what's going to be of Gleyber Torres? Is he going to be the everyday second baseman, or is he going to be moved to shortstop while Didi Gregorius recovers from his Tommy John surgery? And what about second base? Neil Walker is still a free agent. Maybe they can give him a token one-year deal and bring him back as a second baseman for next year. I mean, it would make sense. There's also the issue of Adeiny Echeverria, who was brought in as a defensive helper for the postseason. So let's see exactly what happens with the Yankees. There's also the matter of pitching. Luis Severino had a terrific season. Masahiro Tanaka had a solid season. After that, CC Sabathia was a colossal disappointment this past season. Yet somehow the Yankees decided to give him a deal for one more year to see if he could probably come back and right himself. There's also Jordan Montgomery, who's coming back from a Tommy John surgery of his own. Maybe he'll be able to make a contribution. Do they re-sign J. Happ, who went undefeated for them after being traded by Toronto? Who knows? So there's a lot for the Yankees and the Mets to consider. And speaking of the Mets, now that they made the Robinson Cano deal, they decided not to tender Wilmer Flores. And it's a little bit of a disappointment because Wilmer Flores was such a folk hero for Mets fans, especially after he openly cried on the field 3 years ago when he found out that he may be traded to Milwaukee. Turns out that the deal wound up being canceled. And from that day forward, he wound up endearing himself to Met fans forever for professing his love for the Mets in those terms. I do know that the Mets also decided to tender Travis d'Arnaud a deal. Now, that does not mean that Travis d'Arnaud is going to be the everyday catcher for them next year. Because for one, Travis d'Arnaud cannot keep himself off the disabled list. And number two, he has never been a great hitter for them. So let's see what the Mets can do with Travis d'Arnaud. Maybe they use him as part of a deal, or maybe they'll outright release him and owe him like a teensy-weensy bit of money, because since they offered him, or since they tendered him a contract, he's only going to be owed like $500,000 to about $1 million next season. So if he gets released, then he's not going to be owed that much money. And there's also Kevin Plawecki. He's not going to be looked at as an everyday catcher either. He's mostly backup material at the most. So let's see exactly what happens with both the Mets and the Yankees as far as the winter meetings and the rest of the offseason is concerned. I'm still holding out hope that the Yankees and the Mets can cut deals for some really, really good pitching help. Now, as far as the NFL is concerned, the big story in the NFL is this inconceivable, reprehensible story involving Kareem Hunt. In case you didn't know, Kareem Hunt wound up being released by the Chiefs. He had a sparkling rookie season for them last year, and then this year was having a pretty decent season for them, but then some video that TMZ wound up releasing was caught of him assaulting a poor young woman in a hotel lobby in Cleveland over the winter. He was spotted not just pushing the woman, but also pushing some guy towards the woman, which caused her to fall onto the floor. Then Hunt had the audacity to kick the woman when she was down. And this was what prompted the Chiefs. As soon as they heard about this, they wound up releasing him immediately. Give the Chiefs a lot of credit for not waffling and saying, well, we'll just do an internal investigation and see what happened. No, they immediately decided to take action, and they wound up dumping this idiot. And to make matters worse, that same idiot was caught on camera beating up some guy at a club in January, this past January, with a whole bunch of other guys. We can already see that this kid is in for a downward spiral. And if I'm another NFL team, I would not touch this kid with a 10-foot pole. He's already cleared waivers, which means he's a free agent. But right now, I would not waste my time or my money on that knucklehead, especially after what he did. And even though the Chiefs are going to miss his ability on the field, they're not going to miss him in the locker room, that's for sure. They did make a move to fill his roster spot. I'm going to see right now what the name of the kid that they wound up re-signing. As it turns out, they brought back one of their former players. I'm going to see if I can Google search this whole thing so I can see exactly who the guy is that they wound up bringing back. Well, Charkandrick West has been brought back, and right now the running back rotation is going to consist of West and Spencer Ware, who it looks like he's going to be the every down back now that Kareem Hunt is gone. And West actually had a 3-year spell with the Chiefs. He played 49 games with them, and he had 7 touchdown rushes and almost 1,000 yards in those 3 years, and he also averaged 3.8 yards per carry. So, this changes everything for the Chiefs' running game. And I just got word A.J. Green of the Bengals is also out for the rest of the season because of injury. And another big story in the NFL is the fact that the Green Bay Packers wound up firing Mike McCarthy. And Joe Philbin is going to be taking over as the interim head coach. Just to give you an idea how badly things were going in Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers was purposely changing the plays at the line of scrimmage right after Mike McCarthy signaled them in from the sidelines. So that just goes to show you exactly how much bitterness there was between McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers. And because the Packers wound up losing yesterday to the Arizona Cardinals, the Packers' season is officially on the brink now. They're only 4-7-1 this season. Now, as far as the best game of the day yesterday, easily the best game of the day was that ridiculous Chargers versus Steelers game in Pittsburgh, a game in which the Steelers wound up taking a 16-point lead, and then the Chargers got a pair of touchdowns and a pair of 2-point conversions to tie. And then what really made things crazy was 2 field goals, one of which went wide left, another of which was blocked, wound up being erased because of offsides penalties on the Steelers. So, as it turns out, the third try was the charm, and the the Chargers wound up getting that third field goal attempt to go through. Now the Chargers are 9-3 this season and inching also closer to clinching a playoff spot. And this is just a testament to the type of job that Anthony Lynn has had and has done as the Chargers head coach. Last year, they got off to a dreadful start. Everybody thought he was not ready and that maybe he was on the hot seat. And what happens? The Chargers rallied to go 9-7 for the rest of the year. This year, the Chargers have already equaled their amount of wins from all of last season, and they still have the last quarter of the season to go. Now, as far as what's going to happen with the Chargers, let me see what their schedule looks like, because this is going to be really interesting to see what's going to happen with them. Well, as it turns out, they have one more meeting with the Chiefs, and it's going to be in Kansas City. And they also have games with the Bengals, Ravens, and Broncos coming up. So, the way the Bengals are just slumping this season, you would think that the Chargers would have no problem going up against the Bengals, who are now without Andy Dalton and A.J. Green for the rest of the season. So that's a good 10 wins right there. Kansas City is going to be tough. Baltimore is going to be tough. I think they can handle Denver, though, because Denver's been a disappointment offensively this season. So you figure maybe the Chargers can get 11 wins and they'll take that top wild card spot. And again, I say, if a team with 9 wins is trying to make a playoff push, but no one is around to watch it, do they make a noise? In this case, yes, because the noise that they have been making is on the road this season. The Chargers have been so much better on the road than at home this season. It's been amazing what they've been able to do in their debut season in Los Angeles. And they just showed the computerized plans for the new stadium that's going to be opening up in Inglewood, California, I'd say about 2 years from now. They're actually ahead of schedule right now. Supposedly, the new stadium is about 60% completed. And it's going to look really, really good. They're going to have a retractable roof and everything else. So for the Rams to draw, I don't think it's going to be a problem. At least for them, the last couple of years, they've been contending. And they won yesterday against the Lions. So now the Rams become the first team to make the playoffs by clinching the NFC West. It's just a matter of the Chargers, though. I really feel sorry for that franchise. I mean, they've had an outstanding season, and all they could draw is 25 to 30,000 fans a home game. That's no way to try and create buzz in your home city by drawing just 25 to 30,000 fans a game. What would have happened if they were to make the Super Bowl this year? What, they're only going to have like a couple hundred fans in Atlanta watching their game? It's gotten to the point where I can't even fathom what kind of fan support they're going to have the rest of the way. Now, in our neck of the woods, at least the Giants have not shown any quit in the rest of this season. After losing 7 out of their first 8 and looking really awful, losing 7 out of their first 8, the Giants have now won 3 out of their last 4, including an overtime victory against the Bears yesterday, which really damaged the Bears' Central Division title hopes. But the bottom line is this. Saquon Barkley is a complete and utter beast. Leave it to the rookie to say that there is no quit in this team right now and that he's not seeing any of his teammates quit on the season. Do you know how refreshing that is to hear from a rookie to say that there's no quit from his teammates this year? Whereas other fans might want their team to lose just because they can get the first overall pick in the draft, I find it refreshing that a team is snapping out of it these last 3 out of 4 games and still has something to play for the rest of the season. The Giants are now 4-8. They still have a chance to win their last 4 games and maybe even their season. If they can win their last 4 games, then they'll have broken even for the season. And that is saying so much for this team. Of course, not the same can be said about their head coach, Pat Shurmur. There was a time when Shurmur was really not commanding the respect of the locker room like he was supposed to. Even though he's led his team to victory 3 out of the last 4 weeks, I still question whether he's been able to really rally the troops around him. As far as what the Giants are going to be doing for the rest of this season, well, I know that they have a really brutal schedule coming up. As far as what's next, I see the Giants have the Redskins this coming Sunday. Then they have interconference matchups with the Titans and Colts. That's iffy right now, if you ask me. And then they have the Cowboys. So this is a pretty rough schedule that the Giants have going. 2 teams that are either right at 500 or just over 500 that the Giants are going to be facing the last quarter of the year. But it's not like none of these games are winnable. I mean, the Redskins are very up and down. The Titans are so up and down, I don't know where to put them right now. The Colts are extremely up and down. The Cowboys are going to be a real chore because they've now won, I think, their last 3 games or their last 4 games. I'd have to look at the schedule just to see how things have gone for them. The Cowboys have now won 4 in a row to raise their record to 7-5 this season. And the schedule for them, I don't want to say it's easy. I mean, they're going to play the Eagles again, and they already have 1 victory against the Eagles. They also have to play the Colts. They also have to play the Buccaneers. And then they have the Giants to finish out the year. So right now, on any given Sunday for the next 4 weeks, anything can happen. Now, as far as the Jets are concerned, leave it to Todd Bowles, probably the most embattled head coach on the sidelines right now, to put it in the proper perspective. The same old dumb mistakes and disgusting play from them has led to the Jets having a 6-game losing streak. At this rate, it's just a matter of time before Todd Bowles gets fired. It's not even a matter of if anymore. It's when. After a 6-game losing streak, I see the Jets have the Bills, the Texans, the Packers, and the Patriots coming up. If they lose these last 4 games, they're going to fall to 3-13, and there's a strong possibility they're going to get at least the 3rd pick in the draft. And right now, with the way the 49ers and the Raiders have been playing, I couldn't even begin to tell you how this is going to wind up. At this rate, the Jets have been so incompetent, especially when it comes to holding leads like yesterday against Tennessee. Anything can happen. I mean, they could turn around and probably win at Buffalo next weekend and then beat Texas, then beat Green Bay, and then beat New England. Or they could lose the last 4 and finish the season with a 10-game losing streak, which would be ignominious. This would take on the 4-28 or 4-33 proportions that the Jets faced when Rich Kotite was the head coach. So right now, well, I'm still hoping that the Jets can salvage something out of this last quarter of the season and have at least a little bit of pride in in winning their last 4 games. But when you think about it, the talent just is not there for them to win more than 3 games in a year. I mean, they've got a couple of good chips defensively. Leonard Williams is still great. Jamal Adams is outstanding. But other than that, well, also Darren Lee at linebacker too. But other than that, who do they really have? Of course, Sam Darnold's going to be the quarterback of the future for them, so they have that going for them. They still need an every down running back. Le'Veon Bell, anyone? They still need an every down wide receiver. I would look to somebody to be the tight end right now, and I would look for some major help on that offensive line because right now, things are just looking more and more bleak by the day. And for the record, the Jets wound up losing yesterday, taking a 16-0 lead and then losing, 22-19? At this point, it's back to just end the season right now. Elsewhere in the NFL, tonight, a really, really critical game is going to be taking place because the Redskins are going to play the Eagles. And this game is so vital to the playoff hopes of both teams. Whoever loses this game, I would say you would count them out. Elsewhere in the NFL, at least the Buccaneers are showing a little bit of pride. Of course, it helps that Cam Newton wound up throwing 4 interceptions, which tied a career worst for him. So the Buccaneers wound up winning against the Packers. The Dolphins wound up winning against the Bills, thanks to Ryan Tannehill throwing 3 touchdowns in yesterday's game. So the Dolphins have broken even with 1 quarter of the season left. The Colts also broke even, but in a bad way, because they wound up getting shut out by the Jaguars. Only 6 points scored by the Jaguars in this victory yesterday. Now, if this does not show that they need to get rid of Blake Bortles and get themselves another quarterback, then I don't know what will. As far as the other games around the NFL, the Texans, leave it to the Houston Texans to be the hottest team in the NFL right now. After losing their first 3, they've now won their last 9, which is a franchise record, a 9-game winning streak. And also the Broncos wound up breaking even as they beat the Bengals. The Ravens wound up getting a big win in Atlanta, so the Ravens kept their playoff hopes alive. The Chiefs won a shootout with the Raiders because Patrick Mahomes threw 4 touchdowns or more for the 7th straight game. That's the only bright side to the distractions of Kareem Hunt. And also, the Seahawks wound up getting 4 touchdown passes from Russell Wilson as they just dismantled the 49ers. We mentioned the Charger game, and also the Patriots wound up winning against the Vikings. Did you see the verbal shouting, the verbal tirade that occurred between Bill Belichick and one of the Viking receivers, all because a call wound up getting overturned on the play? Now, unfortunately, this just goes to show you that the Patriots really do get away with a lot of stuff. Bill Belichick tosses a red flag because he wants to challenge a call, and the Patriots wind up getting the call their way. This just goes to show you that I think a lot of the officials around the league are really afraid of Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. So take that for what it's worth. We mentioned that tonight the Redskins are playing the Eagles. So this is going to be a really, really big game for the Redskins and Eagles tonight. Winner of this game pretty much is done for the rest of the season. Now, next weekend, we mentioned that the Giants have the Redskins in D.C., and the Jets are going to be playing the Bills up in Buffalo. Two more, and both of those games are going to be 1 o'clock games again. So let's see exactly what happens. Let's see first and foremost which team is going to show a pulse for the rest of the year. Now, as far as the NBA is concerned, both the Nets and the Knicks are terrible, as always. And around the league, who saw the Toronto Raptors be the best team in the NBA right now? That's the difference that Kawhi Leonard has made with his new team this season. The Raptors have a 20-4 record. And as far as who's the best team out west, it's the Nuggets and the Clippers, who have identical 15-7 records. Oklahoma City's 14-7. Golden State's 15-9. The Lakers are 14-9. Nice to see that the Lakers have actually bounced back a little bit. They've won 7 of their last 10 games also. The Clippers, of all teams, have really been smoking. They've won 8 of their last 10 games recently, and it's been a collective effort for them. And how about the job that Doc Rivers has had really pulling this team together and not giving up on the rest of the season? They're obviously built to try and win immediately. So let's see exactly what they can do over here. Now, as far as college football is concerned, we now know who's going to be going to the college football playoffs. It's going to be Alabama against Oklahoma, and it's going to be also Notre Dame taking on Clemson. That's going to be a really interesting semifinals that they're going to have. And they also came out with all of the bowl games. Ohio State's going to be playing Washington in the Rose Bowl. So it's going to be a really interesting New Year's Eve and New Year's Day in bowl season. And for the record, I think Alabama is going to beat Oklahoma, and I think Clemson has a little bit too much quickness for Notre Dame. So I see an Alabama-Clemson rematch coming up. As far as hockey is concerned, at least the Rangers and the Islanders have been able to stay within striking distance, so to speak. The Rangers are 13-12-3, while the Islanders are 13-9-3. The Devils have fallen into such a deep slump right now. They've fallen all the way down to a record of 9 wins and 11 losses and 5 ties. They're right at the bottom of the totem pole in the Metropolitan Division. So hopefully the Devils will be able to right themselves. The Rangers, they have a Florida road trip coming up next weekend. So let's see exactly what happens here. And speaking of the Devils, they're already trailing the Tampa Bay Lightning 2-0 right now. Now, before we end this broadcast, I once again want to say a special word of thanks to my dear friend Eileen Hanlon, who's been double dipping on the other side of the glass and in the other studio. I want to say thanks to everyone for watching at home. And I would be remiss if I did not mention that my St. John's Red Storm are 7-0 this season after a big win against Georgia Tech and another big win in the Brooklyn Hoops Festival not too long ago. The meat of the Big East season is still coming up, so let's see what they could do for the next few games. So that's going to do it for us. For everyone here, I'm Jamie. We hope to see you next week. Good night, everyone.